Hi, David Lenz from New York Asian Film Festival with Samuel Javier and
Hi.
Eugene. So we want to talk real quick. The festival's starting on Friday, and we wanted to share some of our personal recommendations. I was thinking about the festival in terms of quiet and loud, and my biggest quiet recommendation is Microhabitat.
Oh, you think it's quiet?
Yeah,
I guess it's more on the quiet side,
it's
right?
quiet.
It's drama.
But when I say quiet, it's sublime. It's a very simple story, and it just sort of takes you into its own world. Do you want to add to that at all? I know it struck you as well.
It really struck me as something different because it tackles the topic of poverty in Korea. It has very different dimensions. I think I'm reading it a bit differently from you.
Maybe.
And I thought it was a really. I like the fact that it focuses on the female protagonist. It's really
Absolutely.
difficult to do in Korea to even go to an investor and tell the guy, hey, I want to make a movie about a woman in Korea. But that's not fun.
Not only that, but a woman who, because the prices of cigarettes go up, she decides, okay, I'm not going to pay rent anymore. I'll just go couch surf.
Yeah.
And that seems pretty radical to me in its own way.
One thing I read about it is that as a kind of like a meta thing, the fact that her hair is like changing white, and there's something very kind of symbolic about that, like what that symbolizes in the film. And I thought it kind of brought like the dark side of. I don't know. I thought it kind of reminded me more of like is this gonna be, because I haven't seen it. Is this gonna be like a social commentary in a very like dark and heavy? Like I didn't read it as more quiet. I read it more as like
it's kind of a comedy. It's a
comedy.
But it's interesting because it has none of the sort of in French we would call it misérabilisme. Like you kind of you have this type of movies that sort of enjoy waddling in the mud of poverty. It's like, oh, look at these very, very poor kids. It's like, oh my God, they're so poor, it's terrible. And you watch it and, okay, you get it. You have no money and so on. So that's why, to me, Microhabitat is so interesting, because it's about this woman who lives really on the fringes of society, and her situation could be quite dire. And yet you watch it and you have this sense of resilience, of survival. She's really quirky, she deals with it, she has no problem. And in a way, she's a lot happier than all her friends who did pretty fine. So the movie is kind of like a road movie, except she's so broke, she doesn't even have a car, right? So she's walking around the city with
road
a
movie without
backpack.
car.
Literally, her microhabitat, if you want, is just the clothes she's wearing and basically her backpack, which contains all of her stuff.
But again, actually, and that reminds me, the title, the Korean title is completely different. It's 소공녀. It's like from a novel, like a children's book. Right? What is it in English? I forget. 소공녀. It's about a little girl.
Think about it.
Oh, not the Little Prince, little something else.
Something along.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. Why the title is so.
I think it's closer actually to the spirit of the film.
Microhabitat
has completely different connotations, but it also shows you how you can read the film totally differently. And interestingly, the English title sort of redirects the viewer towards a completely different path. But it's a really funny movie.
I see.
And it's a road movie structured around several encounters. She catches up with her old friends because she can't stay in her apartment anymore because of the rise of the rent.
Basically inflation, but it's her last straw is cigarettes.
Cigarettes, she won't give
symbolic.
up on cigarettes.
In Korea, it's a political thing because the last government put more tax on cigarettes, and they were saying you're taxing the everyday people or poor people,
absolutely.
and not So it's I think for Korean audience, it's a very specific symbolic thing. So maybe that's
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I guess it is. But that's a great film.
Yeah, it really is. And another one, which I would classify as somewhere between quiet and really loud, is Liver Leaf. That movie probably struck me the most out of this year's.
I love that film.
Yeah.
I thought it was great.
Based on a manga, I hope I'm not giving away too much to say that it's basically a revenge movie.
It's basically a revenge film.
But
I don't know if it's a spoiler already.
yeah.
So, I watched. I think,
I mean,
like
you-
me, like
yeah.
I didn't read anything about
Right.
it. I didn't bother reading the synopsis because
Me
at the
too.
time we just had to sit through hours and hours of film.
That's the best way to go into something for me
Yeah.
too. Just watch it and see what happens, and that's what I did. And
I didn't bother
as
reading
things
the
unrolled,
blurb.
first of all, I was it's a story about high school students, and I was already, the way it unraveled, I was transfixed. And then as things go on, there's a lot of surprises.
Yeah, there's a lot of shocks. Let's
Yeah.
say it's a very shocking film. It really hits you. It's a punch in the face.
Yeah.
It's quite different. It's based on the manga, like a lot of things are, a lot of films are these days in Japan. But I think it departs quite a bit from the source material. I read the manga after, and usually I'm always like, okay, they could have done a better job adapting it. It's difficult to adapt a manga simply because of the amount of content, of narrative content. You cannot pack everything in there. So usually it's always a disappointment. Even if you read the manga afterwards, you can always see like this is where the shortcomings are, and clearly. But in this case, I think it's actually an improvement over the source material. It has gorgeous cinematography. The director is a really interesting guy. He has, I think he likes to specialize in that kind of tales of cruelty.
Right.
That's really his angle. One of his former films I really liked too. Unfortunately, we couldn't show it at the time. It's called Puzzle.
Right.
Really cool story as well. It's a movie that also I was in a period where I was just churning out films, not producing the films, but sitting through dozens and dozens of films. When I was in Berlin, I start watching this thing, and I'm like, okay, it's a little weird. They use Puzzle. I mean, they use this. It's interesting to compare Puzzle and
Live Relief.
the latest one, Live Relief. They have a similarity in tone. So it uses. It's also set in a similar sort of milieu with a bunch of high school girls and boys who aren't really liking each other, and so I'm watching this. Okay, another state of bullying, whatever. And then so I'm kind of dozing off, and then you have this scene where you have a woman who's pregnant, who's tied up on the ground, and someone drops a TV on her belly. that really woke me up. So it's the kind of shock you can expect from that director, Naito Isuke. He brings like serious shock to the system.
Well, so he's coming this time. And
he's coming.
NYAFF played a film of his before, his first feature, right? Which is called Let's give the homeroom teacher a miscarriage.
Let's make teacher have a miscarriage club.
Yes, that's
great.
So there you go.
Great movie.
It's pretty out there.
Yeah, it's his thing. I mean, there's I think in Japan and Korea you can see, it could be a Korean film as well. You can see like
very much.
The cruelty of children. It's like there's no innocence. It's you see like the kids, they're 6, 7 years old, and then they turn 9, 10, and they're monsters.
Right.
And that's what the guys.
And Live Relief is teenagers gone really bad, unbelievably so.
So yeah, that's I think it's one of the strongest titles we found this year.
And it's in our Tiger Uncaged competition.
That's right.
Right.
Among another with 6 other.
Yeah, we have seven titles in competition this year. Okay, so June 29th.
Yep, it's coming.
Is opening.
With a big
what time
party.
is the first
With a
movie?
big
Is
party.
6:30. That's Dynamite Graffiti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have We Will Not Die Tonight, that night, which is a Filipino homage to the Warriors. So that's very exciting. So see you at NYAFF.
See you.